Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, episode number 194 of Let's Go Racing. Tyler Jones, Dominic Aragon here with you as we look back at the weekend that was with a big win for William Byron at Iowa Speedway. Only his second win of the season. We'll talk about that and look at the updated playoff picture. We'll also look ahead to this weekend's race at the Glen, Watkins Glen, as we get closer and closer to the NASCAR playoffs. And we got plenty to talk about in news and notes. Lots of headlines going on in the sport. We'll have our mailbag segment coming up later on as well. Dominic joins me right now. Dom, let's get right to it. William Byron getting the job done, getting the victory there at Iowa Speedway. And, you know, with this car in short tracks, we hear the same complaint every single race. This car is not great in short tracks. It's difficult to pass and all this. And I don't know about you, Dom. I think two things can be true. Was it difficult to pass? Yes, but I thought we got an entertaining race. This was a race that could have gone a number of different directions. William Byron held on. I thought it was very competitive. Saw some good strategy involved here.
Mhm.
I was entertained. I thought it was a good race Sunday. What say you?
I did too. The varying strategy of who's going to make it on field, who's going to be able to last till the end, the flipping of the stages, the stage points. Brad Keselowski looking like as good as ever, is we're used to seeing. Chase Briscoe with yet another second place finish, and William Byron eking out a fuel mileage win for the second week in a row. What is it with these guys, Tyler? We heard Bubba Wallace saying last week they were close, and he won an Indy. He does a burnout. We heard the same thing with Rudy Fugle and saving gas and backing it up. And he doesn't have a feel for a burnout, man. These guys are playing some poker on the radio. I love it. I love it. There's some good strategy, and there's been some great entertaining racing the last 2 weeks.
They're playing some poker, or the broadcasters are completely overselling these fuel mileage situations. One of the two.
That could be two.
Maybe a little bit of both. I did miss the burn bar that we saw in the Amazon broadcast. I did like that NBC was kind of showing the percentages on the ticker, the gas, and all that. That was a good feature with NBC USA's first race of the season there, and the production was very similar to Amazon. The graphics were almost identical. That was an interesting element, but I guess that I was reading NBC was producing Amazon's races, so that kind of makes sense. But no, let's talk about William Byron for a second. He's had a good points season. I know that he went through a bit of a rough stretch there for a while, but here he is, second win of the year, and he's been running up front for much of the season. Is this a turning point for William Byron? Are we going to start to see him rattle off more victories? We're coming up on some tracks that have been very kind to William Byron over the years. They've had the speed, they just haven't closed out races. We know he's a talented race car driver. He's got the equipment there at Hendrick Motorsports. He's got a great crew chief in Rudy Fugle here. What do you think about William Byron's position going forward from here after this win in Iowa?
Man, I think like we talk a lot on this show and how David has said over the years, winning fixes a lot of things. Not that there was a lot to fix with the 24 team. You got the regular season point lead now back with 3 races to go. You've got a lot of cards in your corner, and you've got a lot of momentum heading into these last few races. But it had to be a little bit of a gut punch because it makes me think, Tyler, when you have a run like Darlington, where Byron led the opening 200 and X amount of laps, swept the first 2 stages and didn't come out with the win, or all these speed things we've seen out of the 24 car where he's led the most laps and hasn't won the race. You have to wonder, does that give you more momentum as a team? Does that give you more frustrating? Is that more a kick in the teeth? And I feel like all of those things, it could be D, all of the above, but to actually punch out a win, the first one since Daytona in 6 months, think about it, that's their first victory in nearly 6 months, nearly half a calendar year, which doesn't sound right. We were talking before we came on air tonight about how we're both shocked. I think that it's only his second win of the year, only 15 career victories. And I believe he's one of the youngest drivers to hit 15 victories at 27 years old. I saw a graphic on social media about that earlier this week. But nonetheless, man, what a good turning point to do this at and to start peaking entering the playoffs. That 24 team is going to be coming hot and coming alive. He won this race at Watkins Glen 2 years ago. So there's some good things coming down the 24 teams situation. If you're a fan of William Byron, it's a good time to be a fan of that team.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And you look at William Byron, he had a couple of fuel mileage races, even as recently as Indy, where he ran out of fuel. And I think one of the questions that was out there was, is William Byron just not good at these fuel mileage races? Does he not have it figured out? And I think in the broadcast, it may have been Steve Letarte that said this. In fact, actually, I do think it was Steve Letarte that said this. He said, when you get to this point in the race, it's just all on the drivers now. We've given you everything. Now it's up to you to just save the fuel and figure it out and go from there. And with William Byron, I think if you look at him as a racer, Dom, we know he can win anywhere. He's a pretty clean racer. There's a lot to like about William Byron. But maybe the one knock on him was his fuel saving ability. And that's a very important key in being a great race car driver is how to save your fuel. I think for him, this was, if we talk about, who these wins are for, what does it mean to, I think this is a big confidence boost for William Byron and his driving abilities that, hey, I I got over that hump, the thing that's been kind of holding me back.
Not every race is going to come down to fuel mileage, but you got to know how to do that when it does come to
A
it.
decent
And
number of them do, though.
yeah. And you think about it, maybe what on the surface, it seems like maybe four or five really get played out like that, but there's a lot more play, a lot more strategies. And this weekend was a great example of that, of all these different strategies that you see. We see them on road courses and we see them on short tracks and mile and a half tracks, but to really see it all play out, the fuel mileage and just the varying strategy of everybody, you got to know what you're doing behind the wheel. And to be a versatile race car driver, to be able to go out and save fuel. Brad Keselowski was a good example of that through the early 2010s. Denny Hamlin, what they're able to do with the
Carl
clutch.
Edwards.
Carl Edwards, another one. Man, so many good drivers that knew how to save fuel. Yeah, Edwards at Texas in 2008 comes to mind on that one when everybody was running the fuel tank dry and he was able to stretch it. So a lot that can be done with fuel mileage. I think it gives you a newfound respect and newfound momentum as a team. Newfound respect as a competitor for William Byron to be able to do that, and newfound momentum too, because not only have you won a race, but you proved you can now do this in these high pressure situations. Because let's call them what they are. They're very high pressure.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great point there. And William Byron getting done, his second win. So now, looking at the point standings, let's break those down piece by piece. Here's the drivers that are in the 16-team playoff as of right now. William Byron, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell. In the regular season points, by the way, Byron's got the lead now with Chase Elliott about 18 points back. Kyle Larson third, Hamlin fourth, Bell fifth. And then you look at the other drivers locked in with wins: Ryan Blaney, Chase Briscoe, Bubba Wallace, Joey Logano, Ross Chastain, Austin Cindric, Josh Berry, and Shane Van Gisbergen. Then we go to the three drivers that are above the cutoff. You got to think Tyler Reddick is in a really good spot with his points at 122 above. Alex Bowman is in a good spot, but he's still got to be a little bit nervous, just a little bit. If we get some winners, the next few weeks, then he could potentially be bumped out. He's at 63 above. And then Christopher Bell is 23 above after a great day from Ryan Preece, closes that gap. And now he's not terribly far back, just 23 points back. Kyle Busch, 73 back. Ty Gibbs, 95 back. AJ Allmendinger, 118 back. We are going to Watkins Glen, so that could be an opportunity for AJ Allmendinger. We'll talk about those guys on the outside looking in. Let's start with the regular season points first, Dom. We'll break this down piece by piece. The regular season points, I feel like this is down to Byron and Elliott at this point. And with the races that we have remaining here, that 18-point gap could close very quickly here. I mean, you talk about Daytona and everything that could happen there. Watkins Glen, a road course, all these things. Like, this is far from over. Byron's got the lead, but that could evaporate just by one bad finish or a great day from Chase Elliott. And we're talking about this being a different story. I do think it is down to those two, though.
And this has to be, correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler, but the closest. among multiple competitors this late into the regular season in the next gen era when it comes to the regular season titles. It was close last year with Tyler Reddick and Kyle Larson, but you've had four drivers within striking distance now too with Danny Hamlin, Kyle Larson as well this year. You're right. It might come down between Byron and Elliott because those two have flip-flopped the point lead the last few weeks. But bad races at Watkins Glen or flipping for stage points, we could see with Hamlin. We've seen where points have come down to the wire to advance to the championship four or the round of eight or the round of 12. There's going to be a lot more, I think, eyes watching this regular season championship battle than in years past. At least in this next gen era, this has to be the closest among this many drivers this late into the regular season.
Meanwhile, you look at the guys that are above the cutoff. Let's start with Tyler Reddick for a moment. 122 above. But I think the thing that, if you're Tyler Reddick, that's got to make you a little bit nervous is that you only have one playoff point to this point. Uh, you're comfortably in the playoff at 122 above, and it would be a shocker if we got three different winners in races. But if you're Tyler Reddick here, that's a team that has speed. I think Tyler Reddick can win on any given week, but you're coming into the playoff and you're saying to yourselves, like, hey, we won the regular season championship last year. Our performance is not what it should be. And now we're making life difficult on us in the playoffs. I mean, in those three races, Tyler Reddick, that team's got to be on it from the jump. They have not given themselves much wiggle room here. I don't think they're worried about the regular season. I think they are in a spot where they're saying to themselves, like, we got to be ready to go from race one.
So they're what, seventh in points? Correct me if I'm wrong there, Tyler. So they'll pick up a few
Yeah.
playoff points there too from that position. They'll pick up, I believe, four playoff points. So it'll be like the equivalent of winning one race. But that's not that much to carry you through that round of 12 to the round of eight. That's where you start seeing that bread and butter and the cutoff really come into play. Because let's be honest, Dale Earnhardt Jr. has even talked about it too. All you got to do is just not wreck out in any of the first three races of the round of 16, and you're pretty much going to advance through. Don't have mechanical issues, don't have any crashes or accidents or on track melee. You're going to advance into the round of 12. But that's where those playoff points rather, are like that insurance that you have that you're hoping to cash in on as you start advancing to the round of eight, because that's where the boys become men, if you will.
So then you look at the other two. Alex Bowman, 63 above the cutoff. Chris Buescher, 23 above the cutoff. But then here's another thing. So Bowman, similar to Reddick, doesn't have much playoff points. In fact, has none. And then Chris Buescher has -4 playoff points due to a penalty from earlier in the season. Um, I think Bowman, you know, he's going to do what he can to run up front and try to win because that's his only way to secure it without question. He could potentially point his way in if there's no other winners, but the only thing within his control, controlling his own destiny, is winning. But I think for Bowman here, these next couple of weeks, Dom, if you're that 48 team, you got to be thinking, all right, let's get a win and let's get us some playoff points here. Like kind of like what we talked about with Reddick. Like don't make life harder on yourself entering the playoffs. I think it's important for them to get wins and get playoff points here.
They need to. They've been close. They've been very good, and then they kind of fizzled out throughout the beginning of the summer. And when we were talking about Alex Bowman, I think is the point leader in the top two or three in points. We do every year. It seems like Bowman is off to a fast start and then fizzles. And ninth in points is great. You'd earn two playoff points if the playoffs started today, but there's still three races to go. And we'll get into here in a second with the guys below. I've said it the last few weeks, Tyler, there are going to be some good drivers that miss the playoffs this year.
Yeah, yeah, there are. And now we look at who's next. Um, so holding that last spot, Chris Buescher, 23 above with -4 playoff points, and his teammate Ryan Preece closed that gap, only 23 back. And Dom, at 23 points, here's another possibility. Okay. If you're Ryan Preece, you're not, you don't even need necessarily Chris Buescher to wreck or have a 30th place finish in one of these next three races. If he just, if he can race straight top fives and Chris Buescher just averages what he's been doing all season, be a borderline top 10 guy, top 15, then that gap's going to close if it comes down to points. Now, of course, if there's a winner, that changes things. But I think if you're Ryan Preece, you look back at what you did at Iowa and you're like, all right, let's keep doing that the next few weeks.
Yeah, you're gonna have to be looking at the stage point situation and flipping stages, and that's going to be a very interesting spot too, because we know Ryan Preece is having a career in the Cup Series, and they have shown speed. They can go out and win races. They have race winning speed a lot of the times, more often than not. But what a very, very unfortunate situation. You got to be on top of that pit box if you're calling in Priest to pit or to stay out on stage points because you don't think the team can win this Sunday. Because we know drivers are going to flip this to get stage points at Watkins Glen. That's going to be a very interesting follow on how drivers choose to do that. And of course, you see the playoff guys on the bubble tend to stay out like we did at Indianapolis. And we're going to see that throughout the next few weeks. But the stage point situation will be a very interesting follow over the next few weeks. We get no new winners. Ryan Preece is coming. Ryan Preece, I think, has more momentum than what Chris Buescher's team has right now.
I think you're absolutely right about that. But then you look ahead to this weekend, Watkins Glen. We'll go over our race preview later. But Watkins Glen, a place that Chris Buescher has run well in the past. Ryan Preece, not much of a road course racer. And to me, if you're Chris Buescher, I think this is where you're saying to yourself, this is the week, that we need to separate ourselves from our teammate, from Ryan Preece, and kind of widen that gap. I think that of these final three races, this is their best chance to widen that margin a bit. Obviously, you want to get to victory lane, of course, but if we're comparing him to Preece, this is their best chance to give them some wiggle room.
And with RFK Racing, too, we still have a situation here, Tyler. If we get three different winners over the next 3 weeks, in theory, you could have all three cars make the playoffs. And they have all shown some speed, especially Keselowski in the six. Chris Buescher in the 17 has shown some flashes of brilliance. The 60 car just looked great everywhere. But who's not to say, Tyler? Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here. But a Chris Buescher backup win, back-to-back years at Watkins Glen. He does that this Sunday. Pre-showed speed at Richmond, if I remember correctly, from the spring. And RFK Racing has that place figured out. A Priest victory at Richmond and a Keselowski win at Daytona may not be out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, that could be possible, and get all three teams in. With Ryan Preece, um, he has not won a race in the NASCAR Cup Series in his career just yet, but he's running the absolute best that we've seen. And it's gonna be interesting going to Daytona in a couple weeks because he's had some rough memories at Daytona
Yeah.
even this year. What's gone on there? When I look at Ryan Preece, Dom, there's this as well as anybody. You've been following this sport forever. There is still a gap between running up front and winning races. And we see these guys, they go on the incline, right? It's okay. We're running consistently, we're running up front, and we're winning. And I would say that the biggest gap between those three is winning races and running up front. That's a bigger gap than running consistent and running up front.
Yep.
Is Ryan Preece, do you think, Dom, in these next three races, is that next jump going to occur? Do you think he and that team can take that next step up and actually get into victory lane in one of these next three races, or are they still a ways away from taking that next step?
I think it's possible. As a camp, RFK Racing has looked good. The team's leading laps. Ryan Preece is running up front. He's led 68 laps this year, which okay, may not sound like a lot, but that's a lot more laps than what he led last year. So the equipment matters, the team surrounding you matters. And I kind of want to throw this back on you too, kind of looking at this playoff picture, because you look at a guy like Ryan Preece, Chris Buescher, Brad Keselowski, some guys that are getting some momentum. But Tyler, let's say you're somebody like Christopher Bell or a Kyle Larson. Are you hoping that you get more winners like let's say a Michael McDowell or an Eric Jones or somebody who's way outside of the playoff picture to get and grab that playoff spot and bump somebody like a Ryan Preece or an Alex Bowman or a Tyler Reddick from the playoffs if they're able to do that? Like, I'm curious what a competitor's perspective would be on something like that.
Yeah, I guess you're right. That makes sense.
Right? They want to root for
Um,
these guys. You want, in theory, some weaker competition in the playoffs, weed it out a little bit more, I would think.
Right, right. Well, then you look at the guys on the outside. We mentioned Priest, Kyle Busch, 73 back, Ty Gibbs, 95 back, AJ Allmendinger, 118 back. Um, who's got the best shot to get into victory lane in these next few weeks? I think it very well just might be these four guys we mentioned, Dom. Like Priest running better. We know Kyle Busch is capable at any given time. Ty Gibbs has run better, in the last few weeks winning the in-season challenge, and then you got AJ Allmendinger running at Watkins Glen. If if you had to pick one name on the outside most likely to get a win in the next few weeks, who is it and why?
Man, I would think AJ Allmendinger being where he got his first career victory in 2014 with JTG Doherty Racing. They make the playoffs and similar stat line, just a handful of top 10 finishes, but made that playoff run count. Colleague Racing came very close to winning this race last year with SVG. And I know Allmendinger and SVG are good road course ringers, and Allmendinger may not be on that level that SVG is, but he's pretty darn close. And we know how good he is on the road courses. So an Allmendinger victory on Sunday would be the least surprising to me of the guys on the outside. How about you?
Yeah, I think AJ's a good one. I think Kyle Busch too, especially when we talk about going to Daytona. And, I know RCR hasn't been what they wanted to be this year. Same can be said for Austin Dillon, of course. But historically speaking, they've had a good plate track program. And, I think that could be an opportunity for Kyle Busch even to get a win at Daytona potentially. That could be his way to get in the playoff here.
That wouldn't shock me either. He's been the odds-on favorite to win the Daytona 500 the last couple of years since he's paired up with Richard Childress Racing. There's something to be said about Kyle Busch at Daytona under the lights. He's done it before. He could do it again.
Yeah, they very well could. We'll see what happens. Watkins Glen this weekend, Dom. This is a fun track. I know we're seeing more road courses than we've ever seen before, but Watkins Glen feels like the OG, the original gangster of road course tracks. Like if you were to say what road course track has, the most street cred to it, I think Watkins Glen would be your answer. I mean, we've seen some crazy shit happen at Watkins Glen over the years. And I mean, just some exciting racing, some great finishes. This is a fun place. Like I get excited. I like this. I like Watkins Glen a lot better than Sonoma. I think we've had some great moments, whether it's been some close finishes, some fights, whatever. This track tends to put on a show. It seems year in and year out.
Sure does. And hey, I've got a little partiality to Watkins Glen too. You all know my favorite driver is Jeff Bodine. He picked up his finals, 18th and final NASCAR Cup Series win at this track in 1996. They named a grandstand after him too, and him and his family. So really cool special road course there in the Finger Lake region of New York. We'll get here to the picks here in a second. But man, I've never been to this racetrack. I'd love to go someday. This is one of the very few I've never been to, Tyler, but Watkins Glen is towards that top of the list to knock off that list at some point.
Yeah, it's been a fun one over the years, and you look at some of the winners at Watkins Glen that we've seen, as of late, that have won at this track. You had Chris Buescher last year, William Byron in 2023, Kyle Larson in 2022, and then he won in 2021. He had no race in 2020 due to COVID. Chase Elliott in 2019 and in 2018 as well. Then Martin Truex in 2017. If I cut things off at 22, that's 22, 23, 24. We've had three different winners the last three races here. I know that road courses, we kind of narrow the field of the ringers, but one could argue, Dom, that this has been the best track for your non-road course specialists. I mean, I look at some of these past winners: Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, Kyle Busch has won here. Like if you were a guy that is not a great, and Chris Buescher is another one of those as well. If you are a guy that's not a great road course racer, of all the road courses, this might be your best shot to get a win.
Yeah, man, you bring up a great point. Logano and Hamlin, we don't think of those guys as people that are dominant on the road courses, but they have gotten it done. They have shown that they can do it. And I think that was done in a different era too, where maybe there was a little bit more on the car. I'm not taking anything away from their driving skill and their ability, but even Hamlin would say he likes the roundy rounds, as he calls them on his podcast. So this track does open up, I think, the playbook a lot more. And I've heard Danny Hamlin say over the years too that this track is so dependent on track position. So you better make sure you get a good qualifying run at this track. And we saw that in 23, where it was Byron and Hamlin back and forth. They started on the front row and finished on the front row. So a lot that can be done at Watkins Glen, but we've also seen where calamity can happen in the last few laps, like we did last year, SVG and Chris Buescher. So a lot to watch this weekend. It's going to be a fun race to follow. All three series are going to be there too. So it'll be great with Trucks Friday, Xfinity Saturday, and of course Cup on Sunday.
Now, let's talk SVG for a moment, as we do with these road courses. Um, he finished second here last year, and he has been so good on the road courses, of course. We know this. He's got 3 wins this year, all on road courses. Dom, if you're the field in the old question of the field versus SVG that's come about this year, I think you're telling yourself there's two things to tell yourself here. Number one, we all have more experience on on this course and know this course better than SVG. That's what the positive side is saying to yourself. But then you look on the other end of the spectrum, you say to yourself, he finished second here last year in his first attempt. We went to Sonoma earlier this year where we had more experience than him, and he still beat us there. Like it's it's a two-edged sword. Like you come in with optimism, like, okay, and this is our best chance. And then you flip it around for 2 seconds, like, yeah, he's gonna figure it out pretty fast.
And last year too, Tyler, I don't know the specifics on how the car was prepped and what the exact alliance was with Colleague and Trackhouse and Team Chevrolet. But if he's doing that in a Colleague prepped car and he's finishing second last year, he's going to be even better in a Trackhouse car this year. No question about that. And I think it's no shocker. He is the odds-on favorite. We'll get on that in a minute. But it's the field versus SVG, Tyler. I like it. Take your pick.
Take your pick. I haven't looked at the sports books, and I don't know if there's any odds on this, but I would love to make a bet. I would love to know what the odds are of SVG versus the field,
There
and,
has to
and
be.
which one would you rather take? Like, and we can answer that question when we get to our odds segment, but it would be very curious to me, SVG or the field.
Yes. Either way, it's a good bet.
Yeah,
They're probably even like minus 120 odds or something like that. It would probably be something very even.
yeah. All right, let's get to our news and notes. A lot of headlines. Drivers already out of cars before the year's even up. We haven't got to the playoffs yet, and we already got some driver changes. Dom, what's going on?
And one guy was in the playoffs. So let's start with the truck series. You look at the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Grid, and of course Stuart Friesen out for extended injuries with his crash last week in Canada in his dirt late model, or dirt modified rather. But you look at who's filling in for him. You're going to have Christopher Bell this weekend at Watkins Glen, but then the replacement after that is Caden Honeycutt, who got released from Nice Motorsports earlier this week. They had announced that they're parting ways. And then you look at the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Josh Williams and Colleague Racing parting ways effective immediately too. You have Michael McDowell filling in this upcoming weekend at Watkins Glen. We know how good on the road courses he is. You're going to have Justin Haley in that 11 car at Daytona later this month, but Josh Williams and Colleague also splitting. So weird, silly season moves to begin before the playoffs, especially with the Caden Honeycutt move there. Tyler, you have somebody who's locked into the playoffs or in a good playoff spot. I hadn't won a race yet, but sounds like he has found his temporary home, and it sounds like rumors are suggesting he will stay in the Toyota camp next year and possibly in the Tricon garage area.
So let's start out with Caden for a moment here. Dom, I feel like he got screwed here because, like, that's the nature of the beast. His contract was up. He signed somewhere else. He's within his right to do that, and he's in the playoff. Like, to me, maybe there's more going on that we don't know about. Maybe he's made some enemies. I'm not trying to accuse anybody of anything here, but to me, that's just silly of that you can't put your differences aside and go run for a championship. One of the things David has talked about on this show many times is that, and David understands, from both the owner and the driver perspective, but David's told us before, he's like, hey, the driver title's far more important than the owner title. And to basically just throw in the towel and say, yeah, nah, we're not going for that drivers championship. We're not even giving him a chance, that we can't put this aside for a few weeks. I understand wanting to get ahead for next year and all that, but you have a chance right in front of you to win a championship. I just don't understand that.
I don't understand that move either. That just seemed out of left field for that to happen, and they were building a good program there. And like you said, you're well within your rights to go sign with whatever team you want when your contract's up. But it seemed a little weird of the timing of that. But what interesting timing too with the Stuart Friesen news and being able to take the 52 team and it sounds like at the time of this tape, Cade Honeycutt was going to be in the 02 Young's Motorsports truck, so he was going to maintain his playoff eligibility. But now he gets to help the 52 team run for the owner's title too. So it'll be very interesting to see. We know Stuart Friesen is part owner with that team with the Helmar group, Chris Helmar, I believe the name is, and or Chris Larson rather, and their little group they have there. But to actually get a young up and coming driver who's going to be in that Toyota camp to also not only fill out the car but build some quick street cred and help that team out. It's the best of a bad situation.
Yeah, yeah, it sucked for what happened to Stuart Friesen and everything that went on there. That was awful. Hated that crash that happened to him, but glad they could at least make something out of it and find some silver lining of some sorts to go forward with that. Meanwhile, the other end of that, with the other driver change, Dom, Josh Williams out in the Xfinity Series. Josh Williams, friend of the show.
Hmm?
Uh, I like Josh. Good guy, entertaining guy. I think he's good for the sport, but Colleague is in a rough spot right now because this is a team that not too long ago was contending for championships in the Xfinity Series, and they've taken a significant step back. I think they realized they weren't championship caliber this year. I think that they knew that Josh Williams, even if he got in the playoff, wasn't going to do much. What I would have liked to seen is at least let him play out the regular season and see if you could make the playoff and then go forward from there. But they're not going to do that, obviously. I understand they want to get some cup drivers. They want to get a feel for where this program is going and try to get things on track. Um, but I would have liked to at least seen him get a couple more wigs. I understand the performance isn't there, but the timing of this, like you're not, it's not over till it's over. Like I would have liked to seen Josh get at least a few more wigs.
Yeah, and at least like you said, play it out to the regular season, have maybe a clause in the contract. Hey, if you don't make the playoffs this second, you're cut. But at least let it play out over the next few weeks. You've come this far in the season, just to have it derail so publicly like this too. Again, just some weird moves we've seen the last couple of weeks that just I don't know, they leave your head scratching, that is for sure.
Yeah, that is. And then we had some news on Austin Hill after his suspension. What happened there?
So Austin Hill was granted a playoff waiver, NASCAR announced on Tuesday, August 6th. But like we talked about on the show last week, NASCAR made an example of what happened with his incident in Indianapolis with Eric Almirola and the wreck there with a few laps to go, where you do get the waiver, but you were going to lose all your playoff points up until the playoffs start. So he's going to start with 2,000 points as if he just pointed his way into the playoffs, as opposed to running for a second or a third seed there, Tyler, with a lot of playoff points. The effects of this are going to be felt way beyond the Indianapolis crash. And now that team is going to be up with their back against the wall. But Austin Dillon did fill in for the team at Iowa in the 21 car, past champion of the series and grandson, of course, of Richard Childress. But looking on to the next few races, Tyler, this has to be a momentum killer for Austin Hill. And yes, you're going to get your playoff spot, but man, you really got your work cut out for you now.
I'm not one to ever defend NASCAR, typically speaking, on this show. I take that anarchy view. I think that's kind of if you were to separate Dom and I, I'm more the anarchist between the two of us. But rules are rules. And NASCAR made it very clear. on two things here.
Ooh.
The right hook is not acceptable whatsoever. And they have made a point. They've been, we criticize NASCAR when they're not consistent on things. They have been consistent on that. He violated that. And then they also made a point, too, that, hey, if you got suspended, you're going to lose your playoff points. And they are sticking their grounds. Austin Hill knew exactly what he was doing. Even if it was by accident, actions have consequences, and I don't fault NASCAR at all for enforcing what their rules are. In fact, he should just be happy that he got the waiver, to be honest, that he's still in this playoff, that everything's okay, to still get the chance to compete for a championship. I think NASCAR handled this exactly how they should have.
Yeah, and rules are rules. There was no gray area here. It was a clear black and white decision, and NASCAR followed through on what they said they were going to do. And again, they made an example of Austin Hill, or at least he's the first example of this rule being implemented against. And rules are rules, consequences are consequences, and I'm sure we'll be thinking a lot more. Drivers are going to be thinking a lot more moving forward on what they're going to do on the racetrack if they're thinking of retaliation.
All right. I believe that's all the news has said odds, right?
Well, right before we get to odds, we'll look at the entry list for the Cup Series this week. And Tyler, we're gonna have a full field at the Go Bowling at the Glen. Before we get to the odds, looking at the open teams outside of the 2311 and front row motorsports camps there, you do have four other drivers that are typically not on the entry list every week. That is JJ Haley with the New York Racing Team in the 44, Josh Bilicki with Garage 66, Catherine Legg making another start in the 78 for Live Fast Motorsports, and Connor Zilisch in the 87 for the Trackhouse Racing organization. Who stands out the most there of those, and what are we expecting out of these other open cars this weekend?
I like that we have a full field. That we're getting 40 cars in. I think that's a big deal in itself. But of the open cars, I'm intrigued with. I wouldn't have said this a couple of weeks ago, but considering that she did pretty well at Indianapolis and some of these road courses, Catherine Legg, uh, she got a lot of criticism early on, and the ramifications of how she drove, and that it had an effect on some of the other drivers up front and all that. But credit where credit's due. We're seeing an improvement. Like she's coming along, especially for that team. Beach and McLeod and company. They don't have a ton of resources. I'm intrigued for her. I have changed my mindset on her. I'm excited that she's getting this opportunity, and credit where credit's due that she's improving here.
Yeah, definitely a big improvement. The Indianapolis race, I think, turned a lot of heads at the Mexico City race. She's run clean races. Maybe it wasn't the good first impression everybody had hoped for with the Phoenix wreck with Daniel Suarez in stage three of that race in March. But she does have experience. She's run the Indianapolis 500. She ran Xfinity races throughout the 2010s, and she's just happening to make cup starts this year. But there is improvement every time she steps on that racetrack. It's just like anything, Tyler, outside of a race car, just life in general. You get more experience in your craft, in your field, you're just naturally going to get better. And I think we're seeing that with Catherine Legg.
What about you? Anyone else stand out to you, the open teams?
Man, I think perhaps the obvious one, but great segue into the odds too, because he's actually one of the favorites this week as well for winning the race straight up. Is Connor Zilisch in that 87 car? We've seen him come alive in that NASCAR Xfinity Series ride with the JR Motorsports. We haven't seen him put a full race completely together in the Cup Series. Now, yeah, at Atlanta he finished what 12th or 13th, but to actually see something where you're going to have a lot more factors at play, like you will a road course. That's going to be an interesting follow this weekend. He made the mistakes at Coda, had the mistake in the Coke 600. It'd be very interesting to follow how that 87 car does this weekend.
Yeah, and they're going to give him a great car. We know that. They have all the resources to run up front. Let's see if Connor Silch can put a complete race together. Let's go over the odds. Dom, SVG versus the field. I'm going to guess that SVG's odds are somewhere like, what, 150 or something like that?
Oh man, very close. Plus 140 for Shane Van Gisbergen. As of this was Monday's odds when the Monday odd opening factors came in from the Caesar Sportsbook, but plus 140 or about 1.4 to 1 if you're picking him straight up to win before qualifying or practice. Now, second might shock you. Who do you think second?
Connor Zilic.
Who do you think his odds are?
I'd go about 250,
Plus 550 for Connor
550.
Willis.
Okay.
Yeah,
So there's
Zilch
a
to win.
big gap.
Big gap. And then Kyle Larson's next at plus 1100 or 11 to 1. Michael McDowell plus 1200. Christopher Bell, William Byron, and Chase Elliott each at plus 1400. Tyler Reddick at plus 1600. AJ Allmendinger at plus 1800. Chase Briscoe and Chris Buescher, last year's winner, both share plus 2000 odds with Ty Gibbs at plus 2200. Ross Chastain, a former road course winner, plus 2500. Kyle Busch at plus 2800. Carson Hocevar plus 3500. Alex Bowman plus 4500. Austin Cindric plus 5,000 or 50 to 1. You look at the list as it goes down. Former road course winners, Joey Logano, Daniel Suarez, Ryan Blaney, each at plus 5,500, plus 6,000, plus 6,500 respectively. Denny Hamlin, who's won at this track before, plus 7,500 with Ryan Preece. And Brad Keselowski, who has never won on a road course in his Cup Series career, if you can believe that or not, plus 10,000 or 100 to 1.
If you're a betting man, and I know Dom and I are, I think the bet you have to make is AJ Allmendinger at 1,800 here. A man that has won on this track before, that needs a win to make the playoff here. Like, if you're trying to make cash, that's the bet you need to be making, right?
Hard to argue against that. If we're going the whole field against SVG, Allmendinger is going to put up a good fight on Sunday. And you got to think Colleague Racing, yeah, they're on the down right now. They have seen a lot better days right now, but they have to have a good notebook from last year. SVG was a part of that camp in 24 and almost won the darn thing. So there is good notes. And you have Allmendinger, who's known for his road course racing abilities. There's some good recipes right there for a great race day on Sunday. You just got to put a full race together.
So if we're making our picks, I think Dom and I are both going with SVG if we had to pick an outright winner. But if we had to pick somebody next, maybe even a second place finisher or something, I'm going to go with the Dinger as that next name. I could very well see AJ winning this race, getting a playoff spot. If it's not that's my official pick. SVG, but if it's not SVG, if you're going to make me mention someone else, I'll go AJ Allmendinger. How about you?
You ever seen where like somebody's writing something on a piece of paper or a board and they put the little quotations underneath to show that that's a carbon copy right below where that's supposed to be? That's me. I'm doing the exact same thing. SVG and AG Allmendinger.
Okay, there you go. Time for our mailbag segment this week. You can submit questions to us each and every week. DavidStarPodcast at gmail.com. Also on X and Facebook at Star Podcast. You can find us there. And our first question in the mailbag this week comes from Jesse. Jesse wants to know, guys, what do you think of the San Diego race on the naval base? Will it be a success? Dom, we're not going to dive into what you said going into that Chicago race. People can go check the tape on that.
Yeah.
Now the second iteration of a street race, a couple years in now, and I would say too, there's some big differences now of what I would call the road tour for NASCAR. Um, they've kind of got this in a sense like figured out where they can take the show on the road to non-typical places. I would include Mexico City in that, the Clash of the Coliseum at Bowman Gray. I would include the All-Star race, even being at North Wilkesboro, places we don't typically go to that require more resources and more infrastructure. NASCAR's now got this, you know, they know what they need to do. And if you're San Diego, I think in a sense, you're saying to yourself here, um, from an infrastructure standpoint and how this is operated, aren't you kind of glad that you weren't the dummy experiment of sorts? That they got to learn from Chicago and the Coliseum and Bowman Gray and all these other places, Mexico City. And now you get this naval base where there's structure and and the city of San Diego is actually happy to have them there. Everything I've heard has been positive. This is a city, it's a top 10 market, but they don't have the Chargers anymore. The Clippers left them 40 years ago. They only have the Padres there. This would be one of, if not the biggest sporting events there. Everything I've seen, and I believe it's Father's Day weekend. Correct me if I'm wrong there,
Father's
or
Day weekend.
like you know, all of these things, I've heard nothing but positives. And let me reiterate, we're not here to do propaganda for NASCAR either. Um, to me, this seems like if you're San Diego, this is much more well organized. It's set up to succeed based on the lessons NASCAR has learned from some of these other things where they've taken the show on the road. I think they're in good shape.
Very telling too when you log on the day after it's announced or the day of, and you see hotel rates 700, $800, $900 a night. They're already trying to capitalize on it. So that tells you it's already a success that people are that interested. People are probably booking up rooms and deals. And even gosh, we know at the end of the day, Tyler, this sport is a made for TV type of deal, whether we want to acknowledge that or not, that the
It
TV
is.
contracts dictate a lot with professional sports. So even if you don't get a lot of fans, I know looking at the logistics, it looked like there were two roads in and out of where the base is, and I'm sure all that's going to be worked out. But how it looks on TV is going to be a big appeal to that too with the fans and the fact that they're trying something different. I'm never gonna criticize somebody for trying somebody different or trying something different. NASCAR has said they're willing to try something new every time. I commend them for it. I think there's a good chance this is gonna be a success. And like you said, you learn the learning lessons from what worked and what didn't from other venues and other places. And a great point there too with the fact that there's no other professional sports in that market. This is going to be a really good opportunity. There's no Chargers anymore. Qualcomm Stadium was a great area, right? 15 years ago. So this is something that I think the community there is rallying behind too, that hey, there's professional sports coming.
And another thing I'll add too, we don't expect attendance numbers to be high because of the limitations Don mentioned. I think ticket prices are going to be astronomical because of the limit on ticket prices. And then a certain number of tickets are going to be going to the people in the Navy and those involved. Just kind of like if you watch the Army Navy football game every year, most of the people in the stands are in the Army and the Navy because they block out the tickets for those. I think this is going to be kind of similar to that in that sense. But I don't think for these street races, and I would apply the same to the Chicago races previously, I don't think even looking at attendance numbers, if you're trying to judge if this is a success or not, are even fair because with these street races, there are ways you can watch the race and get a very good view without actually buying a ticket and being there in person. Um, the Chicago race, there was people watching from rooftops and hotels, and they had a great view, and they weren't paying for tickets. They were just paying for their hotel room or something like that. Like I don't know what the exact attendance number is going to be, but this will be a bigger event and this will be a bigger deal than what a raw attendance number is going to tell you, I think.
And that how can you not get amped up and excited after that announcement video? And the fact that this was pretty much kept under wraps. Of course, there's going to be people in the industry that know, but you want to talk about worst kept secrets. This was not one of them. This was not something that leaked out weeks and months in advance. There were rumblings that something could happen, but there weren't leaked things until hours before, the day before. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler. I think there might have been a story in the media the day before the announcement, but not like weeks and months like we're used to seeing with other worst kept secrets.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. I'm excited. I hope I'm there. I hope I find a way to be there and be at this race because I think it's a great idea for NASCAR and if it's successful, I think it'll continue for many years to come. As far as that goes, we'll see how it all ultimately plays out. Our next question in the mailbag this week. Um, it comes from Chase, and Chase wants to know, give us a NASCAR silly season prediction for 2026. Dom, what do you got? You got any intel on anything? You got any inside info? Give us. You got any predictions for us, or any information you've heard potentially?
I wish I had a lot more to share, or some rumors, but that would just be hearsay at this point. But the one thing I think that all signs point to, and it's probably the worst kept secret here, but Connor Zilch is going to be replacing Daniel Suarez in that 99 car next year.
Big if true.
Big if true, right? Yeah, and I think he even had it at a press conference there a couple of weeks ago that he's gonna have more opportunity. He might have let it slip kind of like a tongue in cheek. They all have more opportunities to run these races next year. And I can't remember exactly what those words were, but it was alluding to the 2026 Cup Series deal. So that's probably what I'm looking at, and that's probably just on everyone's radar at this point. How about you, Tyler?
It
Tell something we don't know.
Okay, so before I get to the prediction, let me just say this. I hate to burst Chase's bubble here, Dom, but this is going to be one of the quietest, silly seasons in a while. We're not expecting really a ton of driver movement for 2026 to begin with.
Yeah, it just seems like all the parts and pieces are there. We had a couple of jagged pieces, if you will, with the Truck and Xfinity Series stuff. So you might see more moves in those lower series. But as far as Cup goes, yeah, Connor looking like he's going to be running in a Cup car next year and running for Rookie of the Year. That'd probably be the other question there too, Tyler. Who'd be some other Rookie of the Year candidates in 2026? And he's the only one that comes to mind at this point.
I'll give you one. Um, I think that Austin Hill finally gets the call up to the Cup Series. Um, and I don't have any intel or any inside information on that, but I think that whether it's replacing Ty Dillon, and I know that he made it to the end of the in-season challenge at Colleague, or if he can get an opportunity with a Rick Ware or something like that. Like I think that Austin Hill, it's time. And I know we're saying this after him losing his playoff points and all that, but it feels like it's doesn't it feel like it's now or never? I mean, he's had a good Xfinity career. He's proven everything he needs to prove. I think he's better than Austin Dillon is right now. I think if you put him in a three car, he'd get better results than Austin Dillon would. Now that's not likely going to happen because of who his grandfather is, but I, whether it's a small team or whether it's going to college or something, I think somebody's going to give Austin Hill that opportunity in the Cup Series to compete for Rookie of the Year there with Connor Zilic. I think that's going to happen, Dom.
I mean, that'd be an interesting thing. I would be very interested to see if you would have like a step up collaboration, like how when Austin Cindric ran for Rookie of the Year in 2018 in Xfinity, where it was a Roush combo with Penske. Could something like that be where RCR still wants to keep Hill as a long-term play, but maybe you're waiting in the wings for 27 with Kyle Busch, but maybe we can field a 33 and 62 joint venture where maybe Beard Motorsports is fielding some of it, an RCR third car in the 33 fields it. Something like that could be realistic, even if the colleague opportunity wouldn't come up.
Yeah. And then I think everybody's kind of in a holding pattern too with these charters of
Hmm.
how this is going to play out with 2311 and Front Row Motorsports here. I think that most people, Dom, are under the belief that there is going to be a settlement before that December date and that they are going to get their charters back and that their driver lineup will likely stay the same. But then you factor in, Legacy Motor Club wants another charter, trying to work out that thing with Rick Ware. And, there's a lawsuit going on in that end. I think when we talk about silly season not being real active, I think a big part of it has to do with just the uncertainty with this charter situation.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty and up in the air. And look, I'm speculating here. I'm curious now. We're on a little side quest here, but you look at somebody like a Tommy Baldwin or Joseph Falk or BJ McLeod, Matt Tift, and getting out of the charter game altogether before all this turmoil. You think they're sitting back thinking, man, glad I'm not a part of that mess.
The ones that cashed in, like BJ and Matt Tiff, are smiling somewhere. I think some of the others that sold and settled for $5 and $10 million years ago are saying to themselves, "Man, we sold at the wrong time. We should have waited a little bit." Kind of just depends on who you are, I think.
The market, just hey, timing the market beats timing the market, as they say.
Yes, exactly. Dom, before we go, let's talk about what we're up to. What's going on your plate this weekend, man?
Yeah, be a home weekend and looking at doing some more playoff races this upcoming NASCAR playoff season. Typically, that's how the schedule for traveling goes is front loading back loading the schedule and sprinkling some races throughout the summer tends to be the schedule move that we do here with at least what I cover. So be home for a little bit and just looking forward to some family time. Much needed family time this weekend. It'll be a good weekend. How about you?
I am here at home this weekend doing going to a Rangers game this weekend for Choctaw Nation night. My tribe is having their own night at the Rangers game. So
Oh, cool.
doing that and just enjoying myself this weekend at home. But not trying to say too much, and there's still some details being worked out. Um, I wasn't planning on being at the racetrack in the second half of the season. Unfortunately, I've only gotten to go to one race this year, but that could be changing. I might be getting back to the track here pretty soon, so I'm excited about that. Don't know when, don't know where, but stay tuned. It's been too long, and hopefully get some more opportunities here in the coming weeks ahead. So
Look forward to seeing you at a racetrack here again real soon.
yes, long overdue since Dom and I have been to the racetrack together. Hopefully that changes here soon. We will get out of here. Make sure to subscribe to Let's Go Racing. New episodes out each and every week. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review or don't leave us one at all. We get some big changes with this show on the horizon, so stay tuned, my friends. Big announcement coming up very soon, so stay tuned for that. And make sure to follow us on social media at Star Podcasts on Facebook, X, also by email, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. And subscribe to the Studio Soapbox Network. This show, the Jones Report, Coach Vodo's podcast, available on all podcast platforms. For Dominic Aragon, I'm Tyler Jones. Thanks so long. We'll put the checker flag out on this edition of Let's Go Racing. We'll see you next week.